Hey there everybody, Brett from Lovebats in the Belfry back for another video. I have my box of Frankenberry cereal, and this is another Journey Through the Twilight Zone episode here. We're going to talk about one particular episode that I've not seen till just pretty recently, but I have watched it several times since. Season 2, Episode 5, The Howling Man. Really enjoy this episode. I've always heard how good this episode was, and never really knew much about it until I decided to check it out. And when it comes to the Twilight Zone, I don't necessarily think the Twilight Zone is like a show to watch in October or spooky season. I've never really gotten an October vibe from certain episodes. You know, they have their fair share of like sci-fi. Mostly a lot of stuff is like science fiction, but there is some horror spliced in there, a fair amount. And I felt like this episode was a good episode to talk about, especially at this time of year. And The Howling Man is an episode that actually does have quite almost a gothic horror vibe to it, at least when I watch it. I got kind of this like Universal Monsters vibe from it. This episode, if you have not seen it, I am going to spoil this episode. I mean, this episode's probably well over like 70 plus years old at this point. A guy named David who was kind of traveling, and he ends up, it's a really bad rainy night, and he comes upon this monastery, comes upon this person that they're keeping prisoner in this monastery, and they are kind of coming off as people that might be evil, or what they're doing is very morally wrong. A good amount of this episode is based on just dialogue between David and Jerome. They have encaptured what they feel is the devil himself, Satan. Most of the episode is just based on the people running the monastery like full of themselves, and like they're just telling this big lie. Or are they like wildly telling the truth? And in this episode, you find that answer. And I will say what the answer is, most people can see it coming. So spoilers, yes, the guy staying in, who is imprisoned, actually is Satan himself. In between conversations with Brother Jerome, kind of like tries to make his way to the prisoner, and other people of the monastery are kind of trying to prevent him from doing that. This episode is just a great example of just classic good versus evil, and easily being swayed or manipulated by somebody. Works really well with this episode is its payoff. Its build is quite slow, because that reveal of once David sneaks his way over to the cell and he lets the prisoner out. His demeanor is a complete 180, and it works so well, because the second David lets the prisoner out, this prisoner's got like this big bushy beard. All of a sudden he just has this like weird evil smirk on his face, and you're like, oh no, this guy really is the real deal. This really is Satan. And so like his beard basically like kind of like shrinks to like, how you think the devil would look in like human form. Well, does something that causes David to be basically catatonic, like he can't move. And so before anyone else in the monastery like catches this or is able to do anything about it, the devil disappears. And so what I like is the very beginning of this episode, it's a very brief introduction with David kind of just talking to the camera. And this was like the introduction of like, I'm going to tell you a story, and if I tell you this, you probably won't believe me. And so that goes into the episode. And so after the devil disappears and makes his escape, the end of the episode, it shows David like as he's older, and then he's telling this like maid that's at his apartment or house or whichever, he's like, look, this is why I had to tell you, because under no circumstances are you to ever open that door. And so he said he dedicated his whole life to basically tracking this person down again. And so he was able to do it. He was able to track down the devil and put them in a cell. And so he's like, you do not open that door. Of course, when you tell this story, it's just for history repeating itself. Brother Jerome ends up telling this story. David doesn't really believe him. And then so it's the devil. And I didn't even touch on the whole like howling part of the episode, but it is funny, just throughout the episode, you just hear like this howling. And so the Howling Man is the devil himself, and just trying to, let out this like cry to like anyone who's like willing to help him, but he's just there to double cross you. I really enjoy this episode, and this is really one of the only Twilight Zone episodes I really think is like kind of a gothic horror. Good time to watch this episode, like, is in October, during Halloween season, because it definitely has that vibe when you're dealing with the devil and everything. The short amount of time the actor that plays the devil is on screen is so captivating, and just especially how good he is from being like coming off as this really innocent guy to immediately flipping a switch and being like, I got you. I love this episode, and it's definitely going to be one that I go back to pretty frequently. The most popular video on this channel is my top 10 Twilight Zone episodes, and when I did that, I'd not seen the Howling Man at that point, and I don't know if I would put this on my top 10 Twilight Zone episodes of all time, but I mean, it would be one that I would put as an honorable mention. There is a movie that came out, not a very popular one, but they took like this exact same concept and they made a full movie out of it, and that's called I Trapped the Devil. And it's kind of like a Christmas movie. It's like the same concept. A couple like family members like come over, and then he just slowly reveals to them that like he trapped the devil incarnate like in this cellar, like in his house. And so it is such a fascinating concept. The movie itself, that movie is like, it kind of plays out pretty anticlimactically, but this makes for a very good Twilight Zone episode. If you even just remotely say the concept of this episode to somebody, they're just like, that sounds awesome. Check out The Howling Man if you haven't seen that episode of the Twilight Zone. It's a really good one. You know, definitely one of the better episodes of the series. So if you enjoyed this video, give me that thumbs up. I appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel. If you like spooky stuff, I've been trying to get out as much as I can for the month of October, but life does get in the way, so that is a bit hard, but I am a happy person with my Frankenberry cereal. Had to make an appearance in this video. But yeah, thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you in a future video. Bye.